Hi, right now we're going to shoot in Aperture Priority with your digital SLR camera. To do this, it's very simple. First of all, recognize there's three things that need to happen for a picture to be taken. There's ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. In Aperture Priority, you're responsible for your ISO and your aperture. The camera's in charge of shutter speed for you, so it's a very easy mode to be in. Okay, let's start. Select A or AV, depending on what camera you have. That'll ensure that you're in Aperture Priority. Now, you're in charge of your ISO. You're in charge of putting film into the camera, so to speak, so select an ISO. On a bright day, select a lower ISO. I'm going to select an ISO of 100 since it's pretty bright out here. Now, let's blur the background. Let's go out and blur backgrounds with the use of a large aperture. I'm going to suggest an aperture of f5.6. The reason why is because to be successful in blurring the background, the formula is very simple. Large aperture, zoom in, and get close. Now, the majority of you, once you zoom in, your largest aperture that your lens will allow is f5.6. That's fine. Let's select f5.6. So we have an ISO of 100, an aperture of f5.6. Now go out and zoom in and get in really close to flowers, to people, to whatever your subject might be, and blur the background. Just remember, if you're not blurring the background, you're not close enough. Get in really close. Another thing to consider too, to blur the background, is to make sure there's depth behind your subject. Make sure that there's depth, otherwise there's nothing really to blur. Now, let's do the opposite. Once you've blurred the background, let's have long depths of field where everything's in focus, and it's very easy to do that. It's just the opposite. Use a small aperture. Would be a larger f number, f16 perhaps, f22. Then go wide angle. Don't zoom in, don't get close, go a little wider, distance yourself from your subject or your scene a little bit further, grab your shot, and just about everything will be in focus. The only thing that you have to do in Aperture Priority as you're shooting is keep an eye on your shutter speed. Now remember, as you're blurring the background with a large aperture, or as you're getting long depths of field with the use of a small aperture, f16, f22 for instance, you got to keep an eye on your camera's shutter speed. Even though the camera is in charge of the shutter speed, you don't have to take the picture if the camera is going to use a shutter speed that's too slow. And you know what to do. If your shutter speed is too slow, just raise your ISO. By raising or lowering your ISO, it's going to give you faster or slower shutter speeds. Don't settle for shooting with a slow shutter speed. You'll end up with a blurry picture. Now go out and blur backgrounds, get long depths of field in Aperture Priority. If you have any questions and need more information on ISO, please see our video on ISO.